What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the other side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest in cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who've made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and as always, I'm joined by Shannon Times.
What's up? What's up?
What's going on? Welcome to Wednesday's discussion. So Monday and Tuesday are topics. So on Monday, we talked about some shenanigans with Revil and Anonymous Sudan doing some potential attacks within, I guess, what have already transpired in the EU, attacking the SWIFT system for banking. On Tuesday, we discussed how ransomware gang was able to infiltrate some federal agencies as well as a bunch of civilian companies, and how we think that it was never their intent to attack the government, but now they poked the bear. So that's definitely an interesting discussion that we had. And then Fridays, we talk about everything else. So movies, books, games, all like that stuff. So definitely tune in for that. So without further ado, I'll give it to Shannon.
All right, everybody. So this article is from Security Magazine by Kevin Perrault, and it's titled EU Passes Landmark Artificial Intelligence Act. So I just want to say the EU, they seem to be ahead of the game in a lot of this stuff when it comes to cyber. So good on them. But this one right here, the EU has an Artificial Intelligence Act, and believe it or not, they actually introduced this in April of 2021, right? So here we are in June of 2023, and we've talked about, well, I've talked about this, about, Skynet taking over, right? Whether it's going to be Bard or Chat GPT, whatever it's going to be, right? It'll be one of them. But they were working on this 2 years ago. So they had the foresight to be like, hey, we think this can be an issue. We need to put safeguards in place. It's actually official now, to where they actually call it the Artificial Intelligence Act. Like, so there's no getting around it. It doesn't have a quippy name or anything like that. Like, that's exactly what it is. And so what they're doing, again, it's just measures to control foundational models when it comes to AI, right? So what they're doing is they're looking at different risks. So this is a little weird for me, but the low side of it, they call it let's see if I can find it here. The low and minimal risk AI tools would not be regulated, right? So they say the limited risk tools would need to be transparent. So to me, it seems like if you're going to do it, just go full bore with it, right? So like when you say low and minimal risks, like something you may think is low and minimal may graduate to be a little bit more, right? Especially if there's no risk with it, right? So you don't know what these companies are going to do that are coming up with these different AIs. Like, they're going to be like, okay, well, if it's low and minimal risk, we can do this, that, and the third, and you don't know how it'll graduate up, right? Which your hope is that they're tracking it, and then when it gets to a certain level, that they say, oh, okay, well, now we have to do these different practices, right? Like, we have to make sure you're doing this, that, and the third, because it's going to be strictly regulated. But what they're doing is they're going to have a database of general purpose and high risk AI systems to explain where, when, and how they're being deployed in the EU, right? So there's going to be a massive undertaking, right? Especially in this day and age. And when it comes to the EU, especially over in like London, like they do a lot. They do a lot of protection when it comes to cybersecurity, right? Because they have a lot of like, I don't want to say like a lot of monitoring of people, but they have a lot of CCTV cameras and things of that nature, to where these are things that they take serious, right? Like, even though they want to have the security of having the CCTV and monitoring and things of that nature, they also want to make people aware of what is happening with their information and how they're being monitored, right? So that's kind of I don't want to say it's kind of along the lines, but this is the same type of thing, right? So like any AI that has unacceptable risk, what they determine to be unacceptable risk, is going to be banned altogether, right? So they actually have, and I didn't get a chance to read through it, but the Artificial Intelligence Act, like, they have their own webpage where you can go and you can look like, hey, how can we do this? How can it be improved? But they're ahead of the game here, right? So like, good on them. Like I said, the EU is always forward leaning when it comes to stuff like this. And this is just one of those things where, hey, this is, we know this has the potential to cause some issues that are not in line with what we want to do when it comes to protection of our citizens. So what's your thoughts on this, Ryan?
No, I agree. They definitely lean forward because with GDPR being like some say harsh, right? But just being very thorough with, okay, you're collecting information, is how this is the information that you're collecting. This is how you can purge that information. This is how you can receive information on the information they've collected on you, things of that nature. So like businesses have to do a lot of they have to be careful, and they have to do a lot of mitigation and a lot of understanding their own systems, right? Like how will this impact the customer? How can the customer retrieve this information? So in order to be able to do that, you have to know your information inside and out. Like how am I collecting this information? How am I able to make sure it's secure, things of that nature. So uh, it's good to see them step in. However, um, I have to read through it a little bit more because, like you said, like if it's low, then they're not going to regulate it. But if it starts to become, what were the terms? Because the terms are a little weird. Um, it was low. It was here. It is low and minimum risk AI tools will not be regulated, while the limited risk ones will need to be transparent. The high risk AI practices, however, will be strictly regulated. And then it goes on to say this database should be freely and publicly accessible, easily to understand, and machine readable. It should also be user friendly and easily navigable with search functionalities at minimum, allowing the general public to search the database for specific high risk systems, locations, categories of risk, and keywords. So they're going to keep basically a log and ledger of AI systems and what their capabilities are, which I think is great from a public standpoint. I think for business, that's going to be kind of complicated, only because you have to make sure you're in the system, you update the system, and then as well as what information is publicly releasable and what isn't, right? So I think that's what's going to kind of hem up some companies. I think when it comes to government stuff, it will probably not go in the database, or if it does, it'll be very limited on what information they give you about it.
So let me ask you this: do you think it's going to be that hard for them because they already do this on the regular, right? So like this, I realize it's going to be a little bit more work, but
Mhm.
this is not going to be too foreign to them. Not like if this was happening in the United States, I would say that implementation would probably leave something to be desired when it finally comes
Right.
out. But in the EU, like this is kind of their wheelhouse, right? Like they
Right.
know to
Yeah,
be.
I think from their standpoint, but like anyone who like, so it's going to impact everybody though. Like, so like I think they said the top three are the US, China, and then the UK. So the UK already put in policy as because they're in the top three, right? They're like, we want to get ahead of this. We'll make sure we're ready. But any policy that they like GDPR, any policy they put in place that has any implications on individuals from the EU, which is a humongous population, right, has to be regulated at that policy. So like the US is going to be impacted, Canada, China, everybody is going to have to be able to do to mirror the steps the EU is doing because they set the tone. So either we have to be at the level of this new, they don't really name it. I have to look to see what they name it.
I
But we have
think
to
that
be.
I think that is the name. I think it is called the
Is just that simple?
like they have a link in there, and it's called the AI Act, the Artificial Intelligence
Oh,
Act.
okay.
And
Just
yeah,
so yeah.
yeah.
So everyone will have to be at the same level as the AI Act, if not more restrictive. So, like you said, like the U.S. was not probably. I'm sure we were thinking of something, right? Because there is the NIST RMF uh, for AI, but it's like in draft, it's still being worked, right? So that will still be evolved on, that will come to fruition probably in the near future. But all of the US tech companies that have AI that will in some way touch the EU or one of its citizens will have to be on the same power as the AI Act. Just the way it is. It's been signed, it's in law. And if you don't want, like, what was the fine? The fine was like 32 million pounds or 6% of
Yeah.
your yeah. It says non-compliance with up to 30 million pounds or $32 million or 6% of global profits. And as we saw in the past few weeks, like they're beating up Google, they're beating up Amazon, they're beating up everybody. Like they're taking money from people, and it's just the way it is because they are part of the global economy. So like to say, I guess to say like if you're a company right now who does any type of dealings or work with people who are from overseas, you will be impacted by this. Like someone from the EU will be in your system, so you will have to also abide by these rules, or humongous fines. Like nobody wants to pay 30 million pounds. They don't even know what that is.
It does change, right? Like it
Right. So like right now it's 32 million US. or 6%. Like, can you imagine a Microsoft or an Amazon or even a Google paying 6% of global profit? What does that even mean? These are $1 trillion companies. Apple.
Yeah.
So everyone right now is already of that magnitude. So every company of that magnitude is already taking this information and they're sitting in the room right now, virtually or in person, figuring out like, how do we comply with this standard? Because we don't want to pay that money.
And I think the thing is like nobody wants to pay that money, but like once they went and did this, like there were some EU lawmakers that were trying to have like a global summit to have everybody
Right.
on this. You know what I mean? So it's not like they're doing this in a vacuum and saying, well, this is what we're going to do. You guys can do whatever you want to do. But like you're talking about though, Ryan, like it is business is global. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's going to stay amongst all those EU countries, right? They are going to do business with China,
Mhm.
Italy. I think Italy might be in the EU. I'm not sure, but like the
It
US,
is.
Australia, yeah. So I just started naming other countries. I was like, wait a minute, they're in the but yeah, no, so like it is a global thing. So like they're doing this on their end, and then they're saying, hey, come in with us, guys. Like, look at what we did and see how you guys can do the same thing. You know what I mean? Whether it be for selfish reasons, right? Whether to just keep them in compliance, you know what I mean, or because they
Right.
realize, hey, this is a threat that's going to affect, especially when it comes to the top three, the other two being the US and China. Like,
Yeah, and I think it really is for for their people, right? It's like they're going out of their way to make sure that everyone understands how this impacts them and how do I get my information out of this? Like how do I reduce my footprint? How do I find out what they're currently tracking on me? It's all good stuff. It's just from a business stance, I can see them like, oh man, another one. Here's another policy we have to figure out and how to get there basically. But again, the EU is setting the tone. Like we did it with GDPR, we're going to do it again with AI, and we'll keep doing this because we need to protect our people. So US, figure it out. Like how are you going to fold yourself into this? So it's not this it's less of bend the knee and it's more like you said, let's all get together. But you guys are taking too long. Because AI is moving very rapidly. Like people are already integrating it into their business, for better or for worse. So it's like, how do we quickly protect people? Well, let's set the tone, which they did for very very quickly. Like you said, they're already thinking about this in 2021 when AI was existed, but it was not to this extent. Like right now, everybody's scrambling. Either you want to get in front of it, you want to make sure you integrate it in some way. You don't want to like the FOMO is real, regardless of how actual robust AI is right now, which I believe it to be pretty robust. Like it's out here writing papers for people. It's out here asked to rewrite the intro to the podcast. It basically gave me the same intro back. So that to me means it's perfect. It's been blessed off by the AI gods. But I say all that to say like it's only going to become more impactful, and we need to already have regulation and policy in place. And then perhaps it might be too harsh and we have to ease up or adjust or what have you, but it's better to have something than to have nothing. And as of a few weeks ago, we had nothing. So it is what it is. But I think that this will continue to be an ongoing article because I can already see non-compliance being a thing and then setting the tone again. Like, hey, big company, give us 6% of your global um uh how does that even work? Like, where does that money go? Like, we take 6% of $1 trillion. What do you do with it?
yeah, what do you do with that fine, right?
Yeah,
Like,
what do you do with that fine? Do you give it to the people who were impacted?
and honestly, I don't know if it'll ever come to that with the big companies, right? Like they have the manpower to keep from getting in that type of trouble, right? Like that is enough to scare them to be like, I'm not trying to give you, you
Right. I
know,
don't even want to go into
you know what I
the
mean?
court system with you
Yeah,
to settle. I just
yeah.
I just gonna
But
get right.
those smaller companies having to pay, 30 million pounds, 32 million US,
Yeah.
whatever it be at the time, depending on the exchange rate. Um, that's going to hurt a lot more, right? And they may not have, like, you see these companies out here that are firing their cyber divisions now. They're getting rid of their IT folks and their cyber,
Yeah.
so it's even harder for them. So
Yeah, we'll see. But definitely continue to tune in. Please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit us up at all of the websites that go by our name. And you can hit me up personally. I'm at Rai Security Guy. I am on Clubhouse, LinkedIn. There you go. And Twitter. Stay safe, stay secure.